3. We're recording. Welcome, everyone. This is Pastor Douglas of the Great Mount Olive Church, and I have with me on today Reverend Josh Busby, who's the leader of our social justice ministry. We also have Jillian Whitaker of Better Black News, and we're here speaking with State Representative Ajay Pittman on today. And so what we want to do is give you opportunity to hear what she has to say about her leadership in our community and really why we should vote for her. Joshua?
Thanks, Pastor. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, again, as Pastor stated, our social justice ministry is hosting these forums for our candidates for the election that takes place next Tuesday. And so we have Representative Pittman today, the incumbent in House District 99, who is going to talk to us about her campaign. So we're thankful for that. Thanks, Pastor, for supporting the initiative and being inclusive and getting the word out to our congregation and the community. So at this time, I'll pass it and turn it over to Jill.
Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you again for having me. We'll go ahead and dive right into it because people don't want to wait. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, hello everyone. First of all, thank you so much to Pastor Douglas, Pastor Busby, and Jillian for having me today. I am State Representative Ajay Pittman from House District 99. I have had the pleasure of growing up in this community my whole life. I have had the pleasure of serving my community as the elected official for the past 2 years, but also serving alongside my mom during her tenure at the Capitol for 20 years. And so I saw firsthand what we need to do. But now, since 2018, we have made our own legacy. We have been working to move on our own agenda and stand on our own ground of the policy that we have worked on. And so my background, a little bit about me is that I graduated from Northeast High School. I attended the University of Oklahoma as well as Langston University. I also, prior to running for office, was a corporate health and wellness coordinator for OU physicians. So my background is in public health. So COVID-19 is something that I plan to study after all of this is over and see how our State Department of Health and public health system can do a better job at preparing for things like this prior to it happening to us again. I have been a part of Leadership Exchange Academy, which is a leadership cohort for leaders in the state, whether it's city council, business leaders, state leaders, religious leaders, to all come together and share best practices. That is hosted by the State Chamber and Devon Towers, as far as Devon Oil Company. I've also been a part of the Policy Institute leadership class, where you dive into all things policy in every area of the state, whether that's criminal justice, healthcare, anything like that. They have different areas, education for us to talk about, and it's kind of a crash course about policy. This year, I was recently named YEO, which is Young Elected Officials Network, top 35 young elected officials nationally. And so I'm honored to have that under my belt because they selected 35 young leaders from across the country that are doing great work, great policy, and are doing great work in their community. I've also been appointed to the Joint State Tribal Committee by the governor and the Speaker of the House. If you don't know, I have dual citizenship as a Seminole Native American in the state of Oklahoma. So I am the third Seminole to serve in the state legislature from my mom and Enoch Kelly Haney, who is my Native grandfather, who is the one who designed and made this Indian statue that's on the dome. So we have a lot of history in our community. My great-great-grandfather, Abner Burnett, built the first two-story house in our district that's still standing right on Laird by the post office right over there. They used to have a grocery store in Deep Deuce, that's our district, called the Burnett's Markets. My great-grandfather was C.E. Pittman, who was a Jazz Hall of Fame musician. So we have a lot of longevity, a lot of history in our community, and so I'm happy to be leading. Fortunately, I was able to sit on committees that directly pertain to our community, such as public health. Like I mentioned, we have the whole healthcare community in our district. OU Medicine is in our district, Research Parkway, the City County Health Department, the State Department of Health, and the Healthcare Authority. So we have tons of healthcare. So I sit on public health, and I work very closely with all the healthcare agencies. I also sit on agriculture. The Department of Agriculture is in our community, but they tend to leave urban communities out of the agriculture conversation. And just because we don't have feral hogs in our district does not mean that we don't have agriculture in our district. I sit on the transportation committee. So all of that construction that you see in our district, down 235, down the Broadway extension, we voted on that. We talked about it. We discussed it. We know where the funding comes from. I sit on Health and Human Services as well. So any DHS, Department of Mental Health Services, anything like that, that comes through our committee as well. So I feel like my job as a state representative is to refer, advocate, and link my committee and my constituents to the services that they need.
Okay, so what specifically is the reason, or one of the reasons, that you are pursuing the office of House District 99?
So for me, like I ran back in 2018, it was a need. And you can sit back and do nothing, but we have the experience. We have the legislative experience. Our committee meetings are open to the public. Anyone can come sit in them. Anyone can live stream our legislative process. Even Pastor Busby has brought students up there and they have watched our legislative process. So anyone can come see what we do, but it's different to actually stand there and do it and sit there in the committees and understand and read the legislation and look up statutes and understand what those statutes mean. One word can change your whole piece of legislation. And so building those relationships and learning those tools that you need to do your job are so important when you get up there to the building, because I'm just going to lay the demographics out for you. There's 7 people of color. There's only 7 people in our Black caucus out of all 149 elected officials in that building. Wow. So when we're fighting for diversity and inclusion, when we're fighting against police brutality, when we're fighting for better access to healthcare, when we're fighting for economic development, we have to fight against people who don't understand what it is like to be a person of color and come from a minority community. That one. And then 2, there's only 20-something Democrats. So even though I'm the minority of the minority because I'm a Democrat, I'm young, I'm African American, we still have to work across party lines to get all of our bills passed because there's not enough Democrats to pass one piece of legislation. My whole caucus cannot pass one bill by themselves. So I have to go build relationships to work across the aisle. So all the bills that I've been able to pass off the House floor is because I built relationships across the aisle. We want to be able to continue our legacy of leadership, the work that we've done in this community, the bills that we've passed. We've passed the minority teacher recruitment bill off the House floor that would seek to recruit teachers of color, not just African Americans, but Native Americans, Vietnamese, so that students can see teachers that look like them in the classroom. We've also passed the prenatal oral health care bill because they took away funding for prenatal oral health care back in 2015. We had a budget shortfall. We passed that bill off the House floor to try to get that funding restored for our mothers who are expecting. We passed a maternal and infant mortality rate bill off the House floor this year after being debated over it for 2 hours because our colleagues did not understand what implicit bias training was. So we are working very hard to do those things, and we want to be able to continue that. After COVID-19, we are going to need an experienced leader to go back in there that already has the relationships that can say, this is what my community needs. This legislative session, as we saw, was definitely very different. And so even though we've been elected 2 years, I have had experiences that my mom never had while she was serving because it just moves so fast and things change very quickly. So we want to continue that. We've built the necessary relationships. We're doing the work. We're excited to continue. We're excited to work with the community coalition because as we look into our legislation and what we're going to put forth the next year, I think the community coalition that we're working with and that we're working on and try to rebuild will be very helpful. As we work to create a community agenda among pastors, elected officials, business owners, business leaders, organizational heads, it will help us create legislation that directly aligns with the community agenda of the coalition.
Okay, thank you for sharing that because that is important, relevant information. So with that being said, can you talk about the importance of voting to our viewers?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people tend to feel like their vote doesn't matter or their vote doesn't count. And especially in communities of color, we're hard to reach. We're hard to count. So as far as with the census and things like that, we tend to keep our business private and in-house. We tend to not, dabble in politics, but we need you. If we want to change the systems that we see, they will continue to be perpetual if we don't get involved. We may not be like Georgia or Maryland where we're going to have 40 members of the Black Caucus, but we can have 10. We can have 10. So we need you to stay engaged. We need you to vote, but we also need you to come up to the Capitol like you've been showing up to these rallies. When we go to bat for legislation that works for you or that is helping you, we need your support so that those other members that don't look like us see that our constituents' voices matter, that they want to be heard. And so thus why it's important to vote. We have a census year coming up. We have State Question 802 that we need. I was just on the phone with Chuck Spicer, who is the CEO and the director of OU Medicine. He said we will have a doctor desert if we do not pass State Question 802. If we do not get Medicaid expansion, we will have a doctor desert. We already know that our community is one of the least healthiest zip codes with the hospital sitting in our midst. So we have to figure out what that disconnect is. And I'm fortunate enough to sit on a committee with OU Medicine and OU physicians working on that. COVID has obviously not allowed us to meet like we were normally meeting, but that is something that we plan to revisit so that we can figure out how to bridge that gap. And so we need your vote. We need you to vote for the state question. We need you to vote for your elected officials. A lot of times people look at the presidential election and it's glamorous. So they want to vote for the presidential election, but it's really your local politics that directly affect your life daily. It's your local elected officials. Just because they pass something federally, it may trickle down to us, it may not. So I know that we're seeing a lot of national news, but I want you to pay attention to local politics and local news as well so that you're staying engaged with what's going on right here in front of you.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. So with COVID-19, people are wanting to be safe and people are starting to want to do absentee ballots, to be home and stay away to, do social distancing. How do you feel about absentee ballots having a new requirement that was signed into law by Governor Stitt to be notarized, but it was struck down by the Supreme Court? How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's voter suppression, and we've had it in our community for a long time. When I was a little girl, we used to have Take Your Souls to the Polls, and we would march on Sundays to the polls and early vote with community leaders. We no longer have that. That's a form of voter suppression. And so because the Supreme Court ruled, we had the requirement previously that there was a notary requirement, or you could have a witness signature if you were someone that was could not move or a pre-existing health condition, things like that. However, the fact that the legislature feels so threatened by people voting absentee, that is voter suppression. We have no voter fraud, and they try to make it about voter fraud. We have no voter fraud. We have less than 3% voter fraud in our state. We have more identity theft than we have voter fraud. And so those are the things that deters people from going to vote or making it accessible for people to vote. Whether it's someone that is in the military overseas, or whether it's a college student that lives in Norman and wants to vote back home, or lives in Langston and wants to vote back home, or even if it's someone that is in the hospital and they still want to vote in their community. You should be able to have that access just by having your eligible voter registration card. You should not need a notary. It costs to have notary if you don't know someone. If you're telling people to go to the bank or go to the tag agency, some of those things cost. So it's almost like putting a poll tax on voting. It's almost like taxing people for being able to vote, which is completely ridiculous, is completely out of order, and it is a form to keep people from voting, and we have to fight back against that, which is why we need your support. So I implore you, if you need voter registration, if you need a notary, don't hesitate to reach out to me or my office. We have notaries on hand. I know the Democratic Party and Alicia Andrews have been doing a great job with getting new training for new notaries. So if you would like to train to be a notary, make sure you get in contact with Alicia Andrews at the Democratic Party, because they're doing a great job to get our community out and get them prepared.
Okay. Do you have any closing remarks for us before we close it out?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for just allowing me to serve for the past 2 years. It has been my honor. We are working to continue the leadership that we have started. We have been fortunate enough that we were working on a piece of legislation this past year that would allow EBT and WIC benefits to be used in online platforms. And even though COVID stopped that bill in the legislative session, we worked with the USDA and DHS, and that bill is now coming to fruition. So that is just an example of how policy changes and how your elected officials can do something that directly affects your life. We are working to get that expanded so that we can make sure that everyone has access to using their groceries online. There's something, you know, we're not a city elected official, so we have nothing to do with the grocery store. But as a state elected official, especially someone who sits on agriculture and talks about food deserts, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to what we can do from a state level. And that was just one of the bills that we're looking at. I'm actually working to do an interim study over food deserts. And I just recently became a part of the Regional Food Bank leadership class to combat food hunger. And so we're working to study what that looks like. But we need you to fill out the census. We need you to vote on June 30th. We need you to vote for yes for state question 802. Also, we're going to be educating you about state question 805 that's coming in November. We need you to register. We need a new president. We have to have a new president. Obviously, you know that I have endorsed Vice President Joe Biden. As I said on CNN and ABC, we need someone who will be a leader that will unite our whole community. And so I'm excited to be working with him and be a leader that's not a leader, just a leader in our community, not just a leader in our state, but be a leader nationally. They need to see people that look like us on the national stage from our state. Oklahoma tends to get left out because we're a red state. There's Democrats here, there's people of color here, and we want to make sure their voices are heard. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. If you would like to contact me, my website is ajpittman.com, and that's just ajpittman.com. My phone number is 405-353-2615. Again, that's 405-353-2615. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Pittman. I will turn it over to Pastor Douglas. Pastor Douglas, what do you have to say?
Well, thank you for hosting, Jill. And you answered the question that I was going to ask, how people could get in contact with you. How can they help? So election is Tuesday. And so
Yes.
what can someone do over the next 6 days, next few days to help you? You gave your website information, your phone number. What can they do?
They can do a whole bunch. There are so many opportunities. There's virtual opportunities if you would like to stay inside and stay safe, but there's also in-person opportunities. We are asking people to put out signs for us. We are asking people to make phone calls virtually for us. You can also help us by a donation. Campaigns are not free. We have to raise $30,000 to $50,000 to run a campaign every time we run. So if you can just give $25, that helps a long way, whether that's buying stamps to mail things out or whether that's Facebook ads. You also can help by sharing our social media graphics. We were happy to get endorsed by Pastor Lee Cooper today, as well as Democratic leader Emily Virgin yesterday. So please don't hesitate to share those. Sign up at our website for our newsletter. People ask how they can stay informed. We are trying to engage you. We do our best to try to communicate to you on an effective level, but we only have so many options. We try to do radio, we try to do press release, we try to do news. So if you feel like you're not seeing our stuff, please sign up at ajpittman.com so that you can get our newsletter, so that you can stay informed about events that we will be hosting in the future, as well as different pieces of legislation that we're working on or that we have passed. Any of those, our volunteer form and our donation link are on our website. Again, that website is ajpittman.com. Our Facebook page is Representative Ajay Pittman. So please feel free. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm definitely accessible. And again, that phone number is 405-353-2615.
All right. Reverend Busby?
Thanks so much, Representative Pittman, for joining us today. Again, Mount Olive has been, of course, always one of the most engaged congregations in all of Oklahoma City. And so this is no different. Obviously, every election is very important as we move through 2020. And so we want to get our congregation out starting this weekend. Of course, early voting starts tomorrow. and runs through Tuesday. So we appreciate you all tuning in and also watching this forum. So thanks so much. God bless.
And we are recording. Thank you, everyone. This is Pastor Douglas of the Greater Mount Olive Church, and I have with me on today Reverend Josh Busby, Dean Josh Busby, who is the leader of our social justice ministry. We have the beautiful and talented Jillian Whitaker of Better Black News. And then we also have House District 99 candidate Susan Porter, who's going to share with us as a congregation about herself and the upcoming elections and some things that we need to know. And so I'll turn it over to Josh and he will get us started.
Good morning. Thank you, Pastor Douglas. Good morning to all of you, or good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here. Definitely want to thank Ms. Porter for agreeing to come on and speak to our congregation this evening about her platform and her thoughts and her plans as she pursues the office of State Representative for House District 99. Also thanks to Ms. Jill for agreeing to be our facilitator, and Pastor Douglas for his vision for our church as it relates to social justice. And I'm thankful to be able to serve under his leadership. So we are excited to hear from Ms. Porter this evening, and I'll turn it over to Jill.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for having me. We'll jump right into it. Ms. Susan Porter, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, and again, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak to your congregation. I am originally from Oklahoma City, born and raised right here in Northeast OKC. I'm a Millwood lifer. I attended Millwood School from kindergarten to 12th grade, the youngest of 7 children. Many people did not realize that my father, Senator E. Melvin Porter, and my mother had so many children. And so I am the youngest of 7. I attended the University of Oklahoma, where I earned my BA and studied Spanish. I also studied Spanish at the Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara and lived in Mexico with a family, just enhancing my Spanish skills. I'm a mom to an amazing 16-year-old son. He actually has my last name for his first name. So his first name is Porter. And I joke with people, I say, it's not Porter. His name is Porter Chappelle, but he's an amazing 16-year-old, an entrepreneur. He owns Bucking Bulls and has his own business already, actually his second business now already. And currently, I am a regional manager of operations for a dental management company called Heartland Dental. We have about 46 offices here in Oklahoma, and I oversee 8 of those offices, 5 here in the metro and 3 rural locations. And so I work directly with doctors and team members just on our patient care, our patient experience, but also the business side of things to ensure that we're running successful and profitable businesses so that we can take care of the patients that choose to come to our dental home. Prior to that, I worked in banking. I was a corporate recruiter for Bank of America and did all of the hiring here in the Oklahoma City area, had relocated to Austin, Texas, as well as Dallas for the company. And when I left the company, I was at that time in my early 20s and was responsible for hiring for over 70 banking centers. So I have a pretty extensive experience in the corporate sector, also being bilingual, and have had my own business. I actually had a business called Porter Language Learning Services, where I taught Spanish to business professionals. I partnered with DHS and taught Spanish classes to their caseworkers and those that helped with the daycare facilities. I also taught Spanish with employees at Arvis Bank and other bankers through Metrotech, and then had individual contracts with businesses throughout the metro, and taught Spanish for some of our county offices at the courthouse. So I have a pretty extensive background of the things and a very diverse background of the things that I've done, and really look forward to bringing that experience to our state capitol.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. That was beautiful. I love to hear that. Okay, let's move right along. So tell us, why are you pursuing and running for House District 99?
I'm pursuing this position because I feel that the constituents in our district deserve a different level of leadership and representation. You know, there are so many things that are happening around us, and it's happening very rapidly around us. I moved back to Oklahoma 17 years ago and have lived in House District 99 that entire time. I have 3 pieces of property in House District 99, so I am invested in our community. And what I saw over the last few years was just a lack of awareness and a lack of leadership and a missing voice for what's happening in our district. And so I could be a person that could sit around and complain about what's going on and what someone is or isn't doing, or I could put myself into the mix and run for office myself and be a part of that change. And that's exactly why I'm running. I knew from, when I was born, my father was already in the state Senate and had already served a couple of terms in the Senate when I was born. So I came into life understanding the value of public service and seeing that example that my father set, being a page at the Capitol and knocking on doors and being engaged. So within me was a desire to always serve. I just didn't know when that would happen. I asked my father before he passed away why he didn't push us into law and politics to follow in his footsteps. And he said, it's not for me to determine what your future is. That's for you to determine. I laid the groundwork and helped to develop you as a child and guide you. But once you become an adult, that's your journey. And so I took that journey and went into the corporate sector, but politics and not necessarily politics, but being able to serve in that same role was something that was definitely planted in my heart. Mm-hmm. And a couple of years ago when someone had asked me, why don't you run for office? And I said, well, I see it in my future one day, but I feel that that's something that you're called to do. It's not something that you just wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to run for office. The position is too crucial of a position. There's so much that can be impacted by the people we put in office that it really has to be something that is a part of a calling. And I spent the last 2 years really thinking about it after I was approached and said, no, it's not what I want to do. But after prayer and God just continued to put things in front of me to lead me. As you know, when God wants you to do something, he's going to make sure that you hear his message loud and clear. And that's exactly what he did. And after spending time in prayer and talking with my family and just watching what was happening around me, I knew that I had to step up. And once I made the decision that I wanted to run for office, there was no looking back.
Okay. So talk about the importance of voting to our viewers.
Yes. Voting is how our voices are heard. I hear from people when I'm out knocking doors, well, my vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It does matter. That is how we are able to impact change. Not only especially for us as African Americans and as women, did we have to fight. We lost lives over the process of wanting to have the one right that is given to all Americans for the ability to vote and to know that that is how we hold our leaders accountable. Voting in your local elections is just as important, if not more so, than even your national elections, because that's where the policy and change that happens impacts you quickly and directly. And so making sure that every voice is heard, having young people at 18 years old register to vote. The very first election I voted in was when Bill Clinton was running for office. And I remember the process of registering to vote and going to the polls, but that's how our voices are heard. And if we don't vote, then the things that matter to us, it won't matter at all. And our representation will not reflect the community and the district in which we're a part of. I think so many people are denied that opportunity. And so to have the opportunity to vote, we must exercise that in every election that comes forward.
Okay. Now, State Question 802 would expand Oklahoma's Medicaid program to cover citizens earning up to 138% of the federal poverty level. What do you think about this?
I think it's great. I think we should expand Medicaid. I think that more individuals, COVID opened up our eyes to the disparities in healthcare. We saw how it impacted our Native American community, our African American community, so many people who were impacted by this pandemic. And the lack of healthcare, the lack of resources, and the lack of education, is something that we can't take for granted. I see it just every day in dentistry, and looking at, in particular, with Medicaid and what it offers and covers for adults. It does not promote preventative care. It promotes limited exams and pulling a tooth. And we all know when you lose teeth and you lose the back teeth, your good chewing teeth, you're unable to eat your food. You're unable to give your body the nourishment that it needs because you don't have teeth to chew the food so that you're able to feed your body. And so expanding Medicaid to make sure that more Oklahomans have coverage, that we are able to provide preventative care and be proactive instead of being reactive. And so I think that it's a great step to move us forward in the right direction, but there's still more work to be done in reference to the disparities in healthcare that exist not only in District 99 in our state of Oklahoma, but within our nation as well.
Okay. Now, speaking of COVID-19, with COVID-19, people are wanting to do absentee ballots, just to be safe. But recently, it was signed into law by Governor Stitt that you had to have it notarized, but it was struck down by the Supreme Court. How do you feel about that?
Well, for one, I don't think that should be a requirement to have the ballots notarized. There are other states that have successfully implemented absentee voting without the process of notarization. I do feel that as voters, we want to be safe. And as I'm out, many voters are concerned about going to the polls and requested absentee ballots. But then there's a concern if their vote will get counted. You can track your ballot, your absentee ballot, on the election board's website. It will tell you when your ballot was sent out. It will let you know when it was received by the election board, when your vote was counted. So there is a check and balance to that. But most importantly, I think that we will need to revisit our process of voting and how absentee ballots work in the state of Oklahoma. But for the safety of others, if that is the method that they chose to vote, they should feel safe and confident that their vote will be counted. But their safety definitely comes first. If they do choose to go to the polls, I know I will be at the poll voting, and I will protect myself with my face mask, social distancing, and then just ensuring that I'm sanitizing my hands before I go in so that I am being responsible for those coming in behind me, and then also sanitizing after I leave.
Okay. Ms. Susan Porter, I really appreciate you speaking with us today. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
Well, I'm 46 years old and I love Oklahoma. I have always loved this state. I am a Northeast resident, as we say. I'm an East Side girl, proud and true. And I knew when I moved back to Oklahoma from Texas that I would live in Northeast Oklahoma City. And I believe that our district and the constituents of District 99, the residents of Northeast Oklahoma City, we deserve leadership. We deserve to have a voice who will fight for us. I have spent my entire corporate career making changes. I've been with my current company now for 11 years. I started as the recruiter and within a year and a half promoted to a regional manager of operations, the position that I hold today, and helped to oversee an almost $20 million budget and successfully achieve those goals on a monthly basis. But more importantly than that is how I have been able to pay it forward. And I have paid it forward by increasing the diversity that we have in our dental offices when I was a recruiter, by looking at the opportunity that exists in so many people that were previously overlooked and not given an opportunity to advance, didn't have someone to mentor them and to educate them and to help them to grow professionally. I'm very proud that although within our company, from a management standpoint here in Oklahoma, the diversity is minimal on how many people of color are in leadership roles. But of those that are in color in leadership roles, the majority come from the sub-region that I support. So I pay it forward and will continue to do that for our district. I will be someone at the Capitol who will fight. I'm not afraid to call something out when it's not right. And I'm also not afraid to own when I'm wrong. I am accountable. I've always been accountable, and I will continue to be accountable to our voters. And I'm asking that they give me an opportunity to put my money where my mouth is and to serve at our state capitol and to bring forward all of the skills that I have developed over the last years, all of the leadership that I have had, the self-growth and self-improvement that I have personally gone through, and my willingness to be open and vulnerable and to serve and to really, I understand servant leadership. And I continue to keep God first in my life. And I know that whatever his will is for my life, it shall be, as long as I do the things that he expects me to do. Then whatever the outcome, I have been victorious.
Thank you. Thank you. Pastor Douglas, I'll turn it back over to you. Or Joshua.
Okay, here I am. I was muted. Thank you, Susan Porter, for sharing with us. For our members who have heard what you said, and we have less than a week to cast our vote, is next Tuesday. How can our membership who have liked what you said, how can they support you over the next few days? Do you have a website for donations? What can we do?
Definitely. Well, and early voting starts tomorrow. So if anyone wants to get out and get to the polls early voting starts on Thursday, tomorrow. So please visit my website at www.porterforhouse99.com. And financial support, because we are still moving forward to ensure that we have the resources we need to reach our voters, sharing my message and just talking to your neighbor about what you've heard and how you feel and the changes that you want to see happen, and the support that you have for me, sharing that with your neighbors, and definitely making sure that we get out and vote. That is just so important that we do. And I also just want to add that if we have not completed our census, that we please go and complete the census as well, because that impacts how funding is distributed in communities. That impacts education, healthcare, jobs. So voting and our census are two important things that need to be done. But for sure, visit my website. Feel free to reach out to me as well. My contact information is on the website, but I can guarantee you, if you show up for me at the polls, I will show up for you at the state capitol.
All right. Reverend Busby.
Ms. Porter, thanks so much for your time. And so you've given us your contact information. And so if members need to reach out to you, they can. We appreciate you making time to speak with us on this evening. And so we wish you well in your campaign. And thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Douglas. Thank you, Pastor Busby. Thank you, Jill. I really appreciate it. And thank you to your congregation for listening and giving me an opportunity to share my message.
All right, thank you. Greater Mount Olive, we know how important it is that we get out and we vote. We've heard from one of the candidates, and what we ask you to do is be prayerful and make the right choice as we go forward in Jesus' name. God bless you. Have a good evening.